I have got some ghost stories for you.
I feel something crawl into the bed with me and it starts to spoon me.
There was a time where I would be in bed falling asleep and I would hear my name being called. Different voices call my name.
Poof, the person disappeared right in front of our eyes.
And we were both like, did you see that?
There was this figure of a woman. Her skin was bluish and her hands were clawed and her mouth was wide open.
So that is my ghost story.
Hi, and welcome to Haunted AF, the podcast of real ghost stories told by real people. We are your hosts. I'm Julie Fisk.
And I'm Rebecca Black.
So coming up, we're going to chat with Laura Krantz from the Wild Thing podcast about her latest book. It's called Do You Believe in Magic? We've also got so many great stories this week, from a demonic Yahtzee game to haunted Fitbits.
I love it.
And y'all, Rebecca's friend Lionel sent his story, and it does not disappoint.
I told you, he's so cute.
He's
You're going to love the accent,
I'm in
y'all.
love.
All right, but first we have a quick reminder of all the different ways you can support the podcast. You can become a patron at patreon.com/hauntedaf, access years of exclusive content, just $5 a month. You can also buy our cute and very affordable Haunted AF merch. hauntedaf.com. Go check it out. If you don't feel like spending money, which we totally understand that, you can just leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or just go subscribe to the Haunted AF YouTube channel. The best way to help, though, is to send us your spooky stories. hauntedafpodcast@gmail.com.
So we're taping lots of episodes. Well, we're taping lots of episodes, period, because we're releasing weekly right now. But we're doing them in advance. So this is the first chance that we've had to share your input about the Shawshank Redemption EVP that we shared 2 weeks ago. So just to revisit, this is what it sounded like. So when Rebecca heard it, she heard tiger. Yeah. A couple of people had other thoughts. Daniel said the voice was saying tie her.
Ooh, that's creepy.
That is creepy. Brandy and Badger both said they thought it sounded like fire. Actually, a lot of people said fire.
I can hear fire as well.
All right, let's listen to it one more time. I just really feel like that's a T sound.
I do too.
It just... Now I'm hearing tie her.
Well, of course. Same.
Yeah.
But I feel like if it was fire, I don't think you would say it so nonchalantly like that.
Yeah. But
it would be more like,
you would think, but he's a ghost.
True.
So who knows? He might just be really, really tired.
That's as loud as he can go.
That's as loud as he can go. So, all right. We already mentioned it. Rebecca's friend Lionel, he's French. He finally sent his story.
Hi, Julie. Rebecca. This is Lionel from Texas. So I have a ghost story for you. I guess it's more like a spirit story, but I think it's close enough. When I was a kid, I spent most of my summertime at my grandparents' house. There would be like all my cousins and sometimes some friends. And over the weekend, my parents and uncles and aunts will join us and spend the weekend with all of us. And sometimes friends of my parents or my uncles will also be there as well. And one night, I was a bit surprised by one of the requests of my parents' friend. They asked to call the spirits. And I'm like, what does that mean? I have no idea my dad could do this kind of thing. It turns out that he used to do that quite a bit when he was younger and with his friends. And so they wanted to do that again. So I'm like, okay, cool. Let's see, let's try this. And my dad was like, okay, fine. I just need a table as usual, and then we can call the spirits. So the way it works is they get a table and then they put the end all around the table. So you have the thumb touching each other thumb and the pinkies fingers touching the other pinkies fingers, this kind of thing. So you make this circle of hands all around the table. And then my dad was always the one summoning the spirit and asking all the questions. We'll start the session by saying, hey, spirit, are you here? If you're here, manifest yourself. And he will repeat this question over and over and over and over until all the tables start to move. And it will move from right to left, or I will start to turn around and move around the room. And then my ass will start to ask questions. Spirit, do we know you? If yes, knock the table once. If not, knock the table twice. So then the table will lift on one side and then knock once or twice, depending on the spirit. I was pretty sure that someone around that table was putting more pressure on one side or the other in order for the table to knock. And one night, things were a little bit different. Same thing, we were having a good time and someone was like, hey, why don't we call the spirit? And my dad said, okay, sure. So they grab a table again and same thing, put their hand all around the table and start to summon the spirits. Spirit, are you here? If you're here, manifest yourself. After a while, the table will start to move. But that night, the table was moving quite a bit. It was moving like really fast from one side of the room to the other side of the room, and then started to turn and turn and turn and turn. And everybody around the table had like a hard time to keep up with the table moving everywhere and moving so fast. And the table will stop moving. And my dad was questioned, Spirit, do we know you? Spirits, are you friends? Spirit, are you friendly? This kind of thing. But this time, the feet of the table will break in the middle. And we heard this big bang. The table was on the floor, flat down. Everybody freaked out. Like, what just happened? Of course, we were trying to put some logic behind it. Like, okay, the table moved a lot. It was not really a big table. It was more the kind of table where you can put lamp and flower on it. So they say to go with another table, similar kind of table, similar size. And so they will put their hand around and call the spirit again. And the table will start to move again quite fast. And again, we heard this big bang and the table was flat down on the floor.
What?
At the moment, everybody started to freak out. I remember my uncle started to yell at my dad, asking, how do you do that? Why do you do that? Why are you trying to scare us? And my dad was like, I promise you, I have done nothing to the stables. It has never happened to me before. I have no idea what's going on. You will think that normal people will stop there, call it a night, and be okay, fine. No idea what's going on with the stables. We start to run low in tables. Maybe we should stop. No, they decided to do it one more time. And this time they use a table that we use for our breakfast. And so they put their finger all around and started to move the table. And the table was much heavier than the other table they used before. And it still moved quite fast. This time the table didn't break, but we still heard this crack. And I will remember that sound forever. And we looked at the table and the top of the table cracked from side to side. Everybody was panicked at that moment. Everybody removed their hand and were like, okay, no, this time we are done. And we are never going to do that again. Actually, I've never seen my parents calling a spirit after that night. The next morning, business as usual, I will say hi to my mom and my aunt in the kitchen will tell me that my breakfast was ready outside. So, okay, cool. So I remember going outside, sitting at the table, grabbing my bowl, and that was the table they used the night before with this giant crack from side to side. And I was like, this is not happening. I took my bowl of milk chocolate, my toast, went back inside the house on a different table. And like, I'm not having my breakfast on a table that cracked like this from side to side because of a spirit. So here you go. You have my ghost story. Thank you very much for your podcast. It is awesome. I love it. Merci pour écouter et à bientôt.
Him so much.
Oh, he spoke French to us.
Yes, he did.
Oh my God.
So I just
Lionel, I can't believe he's been holding out on me all this time.
I know, but I have questions. Like, I need to know, what did these tables look like? How, when he says they were moving around the room, like, what does that mean? Was it in spinning?
Yeah, I don't know. That's what I pictured in my head.
Yeah.
Back and forth, left and right, and then it started spinning.
Spinning, yes. And so the base of it was breaking and they broke multiple tables.
That's wild.
Yeah. And that feels like breaking tables that's like a real commitment if the dad was just trying to scare
right, because
everybody.
Tables can get expensive these days.
And that's like three that they broke.
3 in a night.
Yeah. So I'd like to see pictures of these tables, Lionel. And
there's a part of me that's like, can we Zoom with your parents?
No.
And do a seance?
No.
That I know I don't want to, but I want to.
You want to?
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't know that it would work through the Zooms.
I don't feel like, we wouldn't be breaking tables, but it might be worth it.
Wow.
Oh, and you know what? We haven't had one of these stories in a while. That's the greatest theme song ever.
Like, I know we were doing the Wayne's World. That sounds like the turkeys.
It's totally turkeys.
When we do the turkey gobble.
Yeah, it's turkeys for sure. So, but it's appropriate for this story from RC. Hi, Julie and Rebecca. I'm finally sharing this weird childhood experience that has baffled me for nearly 50 years.
Oh, man.
For decades, I told no one about it and avoided even thinking about it because despite the innocuous and even silly circumstances, it freaked me the F out. When I was a kid in the 70s, I loved watching TV and I loved playing Yahtzee. I went through a phase where I would sit on the floor in our finished basement and play Yahtzee by myself while watching TV. I'd keep score and everything.
Oh, I love that.
Me too. It sounds so dumb now, but I guess it was like the olden times equivalent of playing a game on my phone while listening to podcasts, which I do now.
You're totally right. That's a great way to describe it.
Yes. I guess I should explain Yahtzee to the uninitiated first. You have 5 dice and a little cup that you use to roll them. The object is to roll certain combinations for points, and the highest scoring move is 5 of a kind or a Yahtzee. So one day I was around 12 years old doing my TV Yahtzee thing in the basement. I ran upstairs during a commercial break. While I was up there, I had some sort of argument with my mom. I can't imagine what would have caused such a blow up because they were rare for us, but I remember being really angry. I stomped downstairs, plopped in front of the TV, grabbed the Yahtzee cup, and immediately rolled 5 sixes. Lucky roll.
Yeah.
I put the dice back in the cup, shook it, and rolled 5 sixes again.
No way.
And something's off. So I kept going, and I swear to you, the all 6 rolls continued.
Holy crap.
After about 5 Yahtzees in a row, I decided to take a break from the dice because it seemed wrong. I tried to pretend it had never happened, but a few days later, I pulled out the game and tried to recreate the experience. After several random rolls, I remembered that my earlier experience happened when I was angry. So I tried thinking angry, dark thoughts. Y'all, I rolled 5 sixes.
No freaking way.
I replicated my Yahtzee experiment on one other occasion before fear took over and I ended my career as an adolescent clairvoyant.
That's probably smart.
Yeah. This story might not strike your listeners as scary, but as a kid, I truly felt that I had crept into some weird and dark world and then made the conscious decision to turn away from it. Today, I consider myself a skeptic, but I also believe the human mind and spirit are powerful and that some phenomena simply can't be explained by science. I've always wondered if I had some kernel of psychic ability that could have been developed if I hadn't noped right out of that Yahtzee experiment. I hope you can use this story. Thanks for the fun show. And that is from RC.
I mean, you could try again, RC. I'm just saying.
That's what I asked.
Did you?
Yeah. I was like, I sent the email. I was like, have you tried as an adult? Have you tried this again? I haven't heard back yet.
If you haven't, can we persuade you to? Come on, it's for the show.
But what? Okay, so one of the concerns that RC had was this was during the time of like when the Omen had come out.
Okay.
And the number 6 had a everybody was really freaked out about the number of the beast and everything. So that's part of the reason that rolling all these 6s really scared them.
Okay.
So,
but it's 5 sixes. It's not 3.
They even said they weren't sure if it had been a different number, if it would have scared them less.
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Because of that. Oh, that makes sense.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
We play a lot of Yahtzee, and I think I've gotten 3 rolls in one game. I think that's the most I've ever gotten of Yahtzee.
Yeah, which is impressive, by the way.
Doing it over and over again with the same number, that is pretty freaky.
That's totally freaky. What a good story, though. Oh,
so this next story comes from a longtime friend and patron. She actually had a story in the pregame,
right?
And she has another one they're going to be trying to share soon. So this is from Sharon.
Hey, Julie and Rebecca, it's Sharon, and just listen to your pregame. By the way, that EVP does sound like a British man, but he sounds like he's completely overly exhausted, saying tired, not tiger. Grr. Besides that, this house that I live in was built in 1904. We actually did have a ghost here. I know it sounds strange. She's no longer here. I haven't felt her in many, many years. I grew up in this house, youngest of 7 kids. My mom was a NICU nurse. Shout out to mom because she rules. So she would be gone at night. And everybody, I think all of my sisters especially, used to see this woman. I mean, just kind of her silhouette, walk by our bedroom doors. I'd be like, Ma, and she used to work 11 at night to 7 in the morning. So I knew it couldn't be her, but I'd still get up and look. And there was never anything untoward. It was, I have a feeling it was the wife of the first owner. So about 1904-ish, 1905. But yeah, I think this lady left eventually as all the kids kind of grew up. So yeah, I was in the basement doing laundry and I was recording some stuff for you guys. And I distinctly felt a poke in my side. And I know I did not lean into anything because I was at an ironing board with nothing around me. And I got the chills like you would not believe. And I literally said, damn you, Julie and Rebecca. No, I didn't say that. So Haunted AF is haunted me. But love you guys. Sorry, I'm totally annoying today. Bye.
No, you're not. You're totally adorable today.
Absolutely. And sorry we were poking you.
Yeah. Apologies.
We need the Haunted AF is haunting me stories. We love those.
Absolutely. All right. Our next one comes from Ed. What up, my spooky queens?
Woo!
Yes.
Hi, Ed.
I have been listening to y'all since COVID, and I speak for everyone when I say, thank God for the return of weekly shows.
You're welcome.
Yes. Okay. So I've been huge into paranormal stuff since I was a kid. Anyone remember the show Sightings?
Yes.
Absolutely. That was my jam. That being said, I've never experienced anything really freaky, but I do have one weird encounter. Back in 2016, my wife and I were on a B&B kick, traveling around Texas, and one stop was Granbury, very haunted Granbury.
Mm-hmm.
We stayed at this house that was about 100 years old, and while talking to the other couples, we learned the place was haunted. My wife and I were both like, oh, snap! Excited we found a ghost tour in town. In fact, y'all even had the tour guide on a few years back, Brandy Herr.
Oh, I remember Brandy.
Yeah, that was awesome. Anywho, the tour was dope and interesting AF, but sadly, no encounters. So we headed back to the B&B and we're getting ready for bed when my wife said, okay, spirits, please don't scare me in my sleep. Thanks. No lie, seconds later, her Fitbit starts buzzing like she's getting a call. She looked at the caller ID and it was her name and phone number. We just stared at each other like, what the hell is going on? We ran out of the bathroom and just barely caught her phone on the nightstand in call mode before it hung up. Wow.
Oh.
Now, we've both had iPhones since like 2009, and never once before or since have we experienced one calling itself. We just laughed and said, well, if that's all you're going to do, that's cool. We crashed and had no incidents the rest of the trip. It's not much, but for us, it was freaky fun. Ladies, we love y'all. And so keep doing what you're doing. I'm up here in the colony, so it'd be badass to run into y'all one day while rocking my Haunted AF shirt.
Oh, I wish. I love it.
That is my dream.
I know,
to
me
run
too.
into somebody wearing a Haunted AF shirt. P.S. You asked for spooky recommendations, and I got some for y'all. Podcast, The Battersea Poltergeist with Danny Robbins.
All right.
I'm in. Movie, Deadstream. That sounds kind of creepy.
Yeah.
And the book, Horror Star by Grady Hendrix. I assume it's German.
Oh, so Grady Hendrix wrote How to Sell a Haunted House. He does tons of great, scary stuff.
Okay, so but Horror Store, I'm not saying, I feel like it's a mouthful.
I think it's just Horror Store. Yeah.
It's an IKEA store that becomes a portal to hell at night.
Yes!
An amateur ghost hunter employees
I got so excited I knocked her table. Okay, keep going.
An amateur ghost hunter employees got to figure out how to get the out. Cheers, y'all, Ed.
Thank you,
okay,
Ed.
But on that note, I do feel like IKEA, for real, is a portal to hell. I'm not kidding you. I can never get out of that place. It's always like a maze. I always get lost. My husband and I always get into a giant fight while we're there and then don't talk for 3 days after.
Yes. And the Swedish meatballs, they're good, but awful at the same time.
Right?
Yeah. No, I think you're onto something there. But back to his story. The phone.
iPhone.
Most of the time when Rebecca and I go out to haunted places, nothing happens. But I feel like 9 times out of 10, something fucks with my phone.
Every single time. There's that one time your battery completely drained. And you're like, my phone's not turning on.
Right. Or it'll just blank out.
Yeah.
Or my camera will stop working. There's something about phones, y'all, for real. And in fact, I'm going out with Sean Giggy.
I'm
WFAA.
so jealous.
I'm so sorry. I know you're jealous and I wish I could take you with me, but I'm really excited. I know Rebecca's got to work, but he's going to do a story at Millermore Mansion on Monday, which is kind of famously haunted in town.
Which I had no idea.
I'm really excited to see if anything happens with my phone.
Me too.
And we'll share more stories about that in the next episode. So this next story comes from Tonya. Hi, ladies. I recently had an amazing trip to Salem with girlfriends.
Oh, yeah.
I took a lot of pictures and some of the images I captured are attached. One is by the old burial point, and if you look in the upper left corner, you're going to see a bright orb zipping in front of the black wrought iron fence. At first, I thought it was a reflection until I magnified it, and wowza. Hope you enjoy this. I love your show. This is from Tonya. Oh, look at that. That's them in their little witch costumes.
How cute are they?
They are so cute. So here's the picture. And then if you look up in the top right there.
Oh, I see it. Yeah.
So I thought it was like a light at first. And then I thought maybe it was a reflection.
Like, because that's an iron fence. So anything that light would hit it would reflect.
But see how it's kind of going over the edges of the fence. So it can't be a reflection on the glass back here.
Right.
It's something in front of the fence right there, but there's nothing else here. I don't see a post that's for a light. What does that look like to you?
A blob? Because I was trying to, logically be like, oh, it's a bug.
Yeah.
But I don't see anything that looks buggish, if that makes sense.
Nothing bug-like. So what do you guys think is going on here? I did write Tonya back and ask her, were there any other pictures taken in that same area? And that's something, guys, anytime you're out doing something spooky like that, make sure you take multiple pictures, because we need to see like the before and after, because it'd be very interesting to see if that was there in any other pictures when she took them. And a lot of times you'll be like, oh, now I see what it is. So we were so excited recently when Laura Krantz reached out. She wanted to chat about her new book. So we're so excited to welcome back Laura Krantz of the Wild Thing podcast and a million other wonderful things. And the last time we spoke to you, you said you were working on this project. Do you believe in magic? Who does your illustration? Your books are absolutely gorgeous.
So his name is Rafael Nobre. He is based out of Brazil, and he's a genius as far as I'm concerned. He does a lot of other illustrations too. So like, he's got a whole series of like classics that he's re-illustrated. So like, Treasure Island and things like that. Anyway, follow him on Instagram. Rafael Nobre, I think it's his full name, and his stuff is amazing.
You've got all of your books behind you too.
I do. All of them.
And the Sasquatch one
just went into paperback in August.
Oh, good.
So, a little more affordable for the kids who want to spend their allowance money on books. Do kids read books anymore? Let's find out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say you say these are children's books or kind of like young adult books, but I think they're great for everybody. I mean, they're really informative. They're so smart, well written. And again, the illustrations are gorgeous. So I think anybody can appreciate these books.
You're making me blush. But yeah, that is the secret behind them, is it's sort of, they're aimed at middle grade, so 9 to 13, but I have a lot of parents being like, I didn't really know this stuff, and I feel like I've learned a lot. So that's kind of a cool thing to hear.
I'm actually jealous of kids getting to grow up with books like these.
Yes.
Because I think back to my childhood, and I'm like, I think I would have figured out that I loved science a whole lot more than I do if they had something like this when I was growing up.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I found science super intimidating when I was a kid. It just felt very unapproachable in a lot of ways. And so coming at this from a non-science perspective of someone who wished they'd been a scientist, I think that's kind of where I am, is like trying to make science more approachable so more people are interested in it and want to go into that field.
Were you a creepy kid at all? Did you like the creepy stuff? Like, I always had all the ghost story books. People knew what to buy.
Yeah. There was a series of books, and I'm blanking on the name of them. They had like black and white illustrations in them, and they were absolutely horrifying.
The Choose Your Own Adventure books? Do you remember?
No, it wasn't Choose Your Own, although I did read those also. Oh, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Yes. I would read those before I'd go to bed, and then I'd be like, oh my God, it's coming to get me. Dean Koontz. I couldn't read Stephen King. Yeah, that was a bridge too far. It terrified me.
I think creepy kids in our time, you just leveled up to the Dean Koontz, to the Stephen King as soon as humanly possible, because I know I was reading Salem's Lot probably when I was like, no lie, y'all, like 9 years old. Like,
whoa! My best friend was the same way. She read Pet Sematary when we were in elementary school.
Oh man, I went the movie route. Like my parents didn't put books in front of me. Instead, it was like Freddy Krueger and Friday the 13th, and all Jason. And I was like 5 watching all of that.
I still can't watch it. Like I have to get up and leave the room during a horror movie. I'm just like, I can't. It stresses me out too much.
Maybe this is how you have dealt with your fear, is by digging into the science of things. Because that's what's so cool about your books. It's like they're still creepy, but then they're educational. Like you actually learn things and they're explained. So you have to give us a little background on magic, because as a big fan of like ghost stories, paranormal stuff, I've never really lumped magic into that. I always see kind of like the David Copperfield kind of on stage, kind of thing when I think magic, but I know it's rooted in something much deeper than that.
Yeah, so there's sort of two kinds of magic that I drilled down into, and I focus I don't do as much with like the stage magic with the David Copperfield, that kind of stuff, Siegfried and Roy and their tigers. Then the other side of it is more things like fortune telling and mind reading and alchemy and curses and potions and things like that. These things that sort of infuse kids' literature and movies, Harry Potter. And what I wanted to kind of get a sense of is how much of this has some realism in its background. And if you look at something like alchemy, which is the idea of being able to turn lead into gold or, one object into another, you can't do it. I mean, you can if you have like nuclear lasers, and that's a completely different story. But like what the alchemists were trying to do is just not physically possible. But everything that they were trying ends up being the foundation of chemistry, which is really cool because they were taking all these elaborate notes and they were doing all these experiments and they were coming up with ways and instruments to try and make this work. And ultimately it didn't pan out. Spoiler alert for those of you who don't know this yet. But it does become like hugely foundational to chemistry. And we sort of look back on alchemy now and kind of sneer at it a little bit, but we shouldn't, because what they were doing was truly amazing. And it's this intersection of magic and science that I really wanted to get into.
I mean, honestly, if you really think about it, like if you've ever taken a chemistry class of any kind where it gets hands-on, it is a lot like mixing potions, if you will.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
And I never correlated that until us talking to you and reading up on your new book and stuff. Like I never correlated that before. And I think it's so cool that you're bringing these two fantastical worlds together.
Yeah, well, I think what I don't like it when people just out of the gate sort of sneer at fantastical ideas, because I think they have they're rooted in somewhere, and it might be, long ago, and perhaps the science of it doesn't hold up anymore, but they're ultimately, it's someone trying to figure out how the world works. They're like wondering, they have a question, and that is the foundation of the scientific method. The first step is ask a question. What are you wondering? And then from there, you sort of proceed through these rational, logical steps to test out your ideas. But that sense of wonder, I think, is really important. And so to try and take that away from people and say, oh, no, your ideas are stupid, or why would you ask a question like that? That's dumb.
I think that's one of the things I love so much about your work is that you talk about how every sort of big scientific discovery was crazy before it was proven.
Yes.
It seemed like crazy science that could never be possible. And then someone was able to prove it and it became fact. So it's like all of this stuff, how much of this, in fact, what do you think is probably the closest bit of like magic that could be proven in reality today?
So proven is a hard one, but I'm going to tell you the one that freaks me out the most. In keeping with the theme of this podcast. So the section that I did on curses was really, really interesting. And I looked at things like King Tut's curse, the curse of King Tut's tomb. And I get into that in the book. And I look at other, curses. This is something that humans have done for millennia. Like basically since we could start pointing at someone else and telling them to go to hell. Like that's been in our toolbox. And so one of the stories that I came across, this happened back in the 1930s, and there was a doctor who was working in rural Alabama, and this man presented at the hospital. He had been sick, not eating, had lost 50 pounds. Every time he ate, he would throw up. And they did all the tests that were available at the time to see if he had either tuberculosis or cancer, which were sort of the two big things that they would have been keeping an eye on. And none of those tests came out that way. And this is going on for weeks, and this guy is clearly going to die. And finally, the guy's wife pulls the doctor aside and says, I haven't wanted to tell you this because it would put all of us in danger. But about 4 months ago, my husband got into an argument with the local voodoo priest, and they were adherents to the voodoo religion. The voodoo doctor or the voodoo priest had cursed this man and said, you are going to die. And there's nothing you can do about it. And if your friends and family try to tell anyone, they're going to die too. So everyone was like super hush hush about this. And the doctor was like, okay, what do I do with this piece of information? And so what he chose to do was the next morning he shows up at the hospital. He says, I want the whole family to come and gather around. And he tells the patient who is slipping in and out of consciousness, he says, I went to the graveyard and I met with the voodoo priest and I forced him to tell me what he'd done to you. He tried to laugh me off. He tried to make me run away. And I pushed him up against a tree and I held an arm to his throat. And I said, you tell me now or I'll kill you. And the voodoo priest spilled his secrets. And the doctor says to the patient, what he did was he rubbed lizard eggs on your skin. And those lizard eggs went down into your body and into your stomach. And one of those lizards lived and it's eating up all your food. And that is what is making you sick. And so now that I know what he's done, I'm going to remove this curse. And he brings the nurse in and she's got a syringe full of an emetic, which is a solution that will just make you barf your brains out. And the doctor stabs the needle into the guy and, pushes the plunger all the way in and fills him to the brim with this emetic and then walks out of the room. And a few minutes later, the nurse comes to find the doctor and says, okay, he's starting to throw up. And so the doctor comes into the room and finds the patient just like face down into the bucket, just puking his guts out. And when it looks like he's about to finish, the doctor, unbeknownst to anyone else, pulls a small green lizard out of his bag and dumps it into the basin. And then he's like, look what has come out of you. You're cured. The curse has lifted. And the patient falls back on the bed, falls asleep for 12 hours, wakes up, starts eating again, and goes on to live for like another 10 or 15 years.
Wow.
That story just kind of still raises the hair on my arms because there is nothing medically wrong with this person from like a biochemical molecular standpoint. But he believed the curse and the people around him believed the curse. And other people who had been cursed by this voodoo priest probably had died. And so the minute he got that curse from the priest, it was a death sentence. And it's your brain just, the chemistry changes and it heads in a different direction. And it's called the nocebo effect. So having this negative reaction. Doctors to this day and scientists to this day still don't have a full understanding of how it works. They know what's going on, but like the ins and outs and the particulars of it are still something of a mystery. And I thought that was the coolest story.
Anybody who's ever suffered from like health anxiety knows the reality of this, because I have convinced myself that I was dying so many times and given myself like actually had weird symptoms that I had looked up, like, and I know I'm capable of doing this, but it's real. We will convince ourselves of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
WebMD didn't help either.
No,
it didn't. I have Ebola.
Yes, exactly.
When we talked to Emma from Real Life Ghost Stories, she told us a story about a group of people. They were all suffering from sleep paralysis, and they all kept talking about this, the woman who would show up.
The old hag.
The old hag.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And how so many of they were actually dying in their sleep. And they felt like it was kind of that type of phenomenon where it's like a group hysteria or whatever, but they believed so strongly that this thing was showing up in their sleep and killing them that they were dying.
Yeah, they're scared to death, essentially.
Yeah.
I have had those dreams where you wake up and you cannot move and it feels like someone is sitting on your chest. And it is very unsettling to like try and get your brain to a place where it's awake enough that it sort of unlocks your muscles, because essentially what the brain is doing is as you're in deep sleep, it is sending chemical signals to lock all your muscles down. So as you're dreaming, you're not going to hurt yourself. But sometimes you come out of that before your body does. And it's such an odd sensation.
Sometimes I'm just blown away by the freaking mind and how it can do all of these things, whether you're asleep or awake or whatever. Like it's mind blowing, if you will.
Yeah. Well, and then the flip side of the curses is like placebo effect and things like potions. Like you would have had doctors or witch doctors or, potion masters long ago who would have put together these concoctions and given them to someone. And there may or may not have been anything in there that was remotely medicinal, but just the act of giving that to someone and providing care often could cause an improvement. Which I'm sure would have felt like magic.
Do you have a personal scary story? I don't feel like have we had
ever asked? I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny. I was at the Stanley Hotel this last weekend. I actually went to see I went to see a magician perform. And so we were up in Estes Park and went to a magic show. Heard a couple of the ghost stories, which they were kind of I think The Shining was scarier than anything that they could come up with, which I think in part is because the ghost stories around the Stanley didn't actually happen until after The Shining came out. So Stephen King created a little cottage industry up there. I did walk through the maze.
Ooh,
in front.
Cool.
Yeah, did not get lost. I'm here. I lived.
Yeah. Facts. Yeah. I think that's something that Rebecca and I've realized over the countless ghost tours that we have taken. It's just like, they're not that scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like people could do better.
But hold on. Back to the magic of it all.
Yeah.
And like all the things that we've been saying, it's like, what if Stephen King kind of put those thoughts in people's head and has now made the Stanley Hotel a little scarier for it?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, I mean, the stuff that he put into people's imaginations has definitely allowed them to like, well, first of all, the Stanley Hotel is probably minting money on that stuff.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But also I think, people like being scared. They like that sort of like frozen of like cold, nervous energy going down their spine. So, yeah, good on the Stanley for
embracing it.
Embracing it. Just, get a few better ghost stories.
We're such big fans. Everything you do is amazing. But that's why I have to give you a pitch this time. When it's time, and we've talked about it before, you don't like this idea. When it's time for you to work on your next podcast, please do it about ghosts, because we have had a lot of discussions lately about like the science of
okay.
Is there
I'm listening.
Possible science, something behind the paranormal? Because we've heard so many stories for so many years now. We're convinced that there's something to it. We just don't know what.
Right.
Yeah.
And we really just kind of feel like if somebody would dig into the science of this, we might actually get like real answers, but then nobody wants to because it's so woo.
Yeah.
But because you have such that great approach of being respectful, but also a skeptic, but you dig it too. So it would be really fun to have you look into it. Laura Krantz, you're always awesome. Keep us posted.
I
Let
will.
us know everything you're up to. Congratulations one more time. Do you believe in magic? Where can people pick this up?
They can get it online. I think, Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes and Noble. And then I believe you can also get it through Bookshop, which goes to a lot of the different independent bookstores. And then if you don't find it in your bookstore, ask them to carry it. That would be amazing.
Heads up, Haunted AF will continue releasing weekly episodes after Halloween this year.
Wait,
and
are we sure we want to do that?
You tell me.
Do we really want to do
You're
that?
in charge. You tell me.
Okay.
Because this has been a lot.
This
has
is
been
a
a
lot.
wild September and October for us.
Yeah. And let me be clear, for years and years, we would do 3 months on and 3 months off.
Right.
We're not going to do that anymore. We are going to be releasing weekly episodes and just taking like a week off here and there for like the holidays or birthdays and stuff.
So that's pretty exciting. And with that, of course, we'd like to start a new segment, and we're going to help analyze your dreams. This actually stems from this freaky dream I had recently where a big old ET finger was basically probing my ears.
Oh,
yeah, into my brain. Okay. And we know that I'm not the only one that has some weird dreams. Julie's not the only one that has weird dreams. We know you do too. So please send us your dreams. We know we're not dream experts or anything like that, but we do know how to use the Google machine.
Yes.
And we think this would be a lot of fun. So please send us your dreams, hauntedafpodcast@gmail.com, and we're going to help you out.
And obviously, we really need your stories
Yes.
in a big way. So what are we looking for? There's the usual ghosts, cryptids, UAPs. We love those glitch in the matrix stories and the weird shit stories that just can't be explained. And if you have a spooky book, movie, or series to recommend, send all of that as well to hauntedafpodcast@gmail.com so we can use it on the next Haunted AF.